I have this take on every single rookie quarterback. Jared Goff in 2016, it was like him or Case Keenum. I said, when Jared Goff's ready, he plays. That's it. If you're 10-0, doesn't matter. When Jared Goff's ready, he plays. It's all about his development. When Justin Fields is ready, he plays. It doesn't matter if you have Andy Dalton at quarterback, Alex Smith. It shouldn't matter, because if the Bears the Bears should only care about Justin Fields' development, and that's it. And I don't know what the answer is for that development. I don't know if sitting is better. I don't know if there's a piece of the playbook he's just not getting. I don't know if they need him. Blitz recognition, getting rid of the ball quick. I don't know what it is. But if you feel like it's missing, then don't play him. Once he gets it, whatever that is, you play him, because it doesn't, like, winning week 2 in 2021 has nothing to do with the Bears' future. Justin Fields is the Bears' future.
All right, here we go with the ever-evolving Cris Collinsworth podcast. You never know what you're going to get on a given day. By the way, Eric Eager, Steve Palazzolo here with us from PFF. How did we do on our bets last week? Did you look
I don't think we did well. I actually did go back and look. We got Cincinnati. That was good.
That was good.
Well, the bets on your show, I think Green Line was fine, but the bets on your show, I felt like we didn't bet totals. Totals we did fine, but we thought Tampa Bay was going to cover that big number. They did not. We thought Washington would beat Los Angeles, and that didn't happen. I'm trying to think of the other one where we missed. We liked the Jets, although I think the Jets did end up covering 5. They didn't cover, the closing number. So I thought we did okay. The Bengals one, you were skeptical of your own team, and they go out there and they win outright against the Minnesota team that's, I think, kind of lost the game more than the Bengals won it.
You know what was amazing this week was watching Joe Burrow and Dak Prescott play. Mm-hmm. It's like in having the conversations with Dak, I was going, how can you not be thinking about this? How can you not all right, you've got the ankle thing, you haven't been out there to play, then you get the shoulder, so now you haven't even had practice.
Right.
And now you're going out there and he just lit the world on fire. He looked great.
Couple gamers, right? Like Burrow Burrow kind of got banged up in that game, right? And you could see the Bengals sort of throttling down a little bit. But then when it was time, good on Zach Taylor, going for 4th and 1 in overtime, knowing if you miss it, you're probably going to lose the game, and then going down the field with a shot.
All right, let's talk about the other 4th down that they went for it on their own 30-yard line. You're up 14 points. Mm-hmm. So you're like George. It's like, it's always go for it, go for it, go for it. But there's also the emotional swing that can go with not making that one, right?
Yep. I would, but here's the thing. I'm going to see what Steve says, but I think about it like, I don't think they lost any emotion. I just think that they knew that the Vikings offense was eventually going to do things, right? They're eventually going to come back and play well because they, have a good quarterback and good wide receivers. And they knew that if they didn't extend the lead, right? And they were running at will. Like, how many yards rushing did they? Joe Mixon at 127 on the ground.
Was fantastic.
So they kind of thought that they could get a yard on this Vikings defense. And if they would have made that up 2 touchdowns, the game's over, right? Like, I think that's how they see it.
It's thinking through the lens of winning rather than not losing.
Exactly.
I think that's the bottom line with all of this. And the Browns were fantastic at all of those decisions, right? And especially the Browns in an underdog role, like where you have to maximize points against the Chiefs. You have to make those decisions. And when they pay off, that's when you have a game where you almost beat the Chiefs if you don't turn it over late. So but it's thinking about the win.
All they got to do to beat the Chiefs is not put the ball on the ground, and Baker tries to throw it out of bounds when he's going to the ground.
It's a fumble, 2 fumbles, and the big
drop punt.
But also, a 75-yard freak play by Mahomes entirely.
Totally freak play. Mahomes, what's unbelievable about him is I'm sitting there watching the tape of this thing, and I'm like, there were 2 throws that, when you're just watching the tape and not the game itself, where he just threw it directly into coverage, should have been intercepted. But you watch the snap, and the guy barely flinches on both of those plays, barely flinches, and Mahomes was catching the ball with one hand one time.
Right.
And while he's looking at the official to see if he's going to throw the flag or not, the minute he throws the flag, he throws the
threw it into
YOLO
coverage,
up.
but it wasn't his. Like, he knew.
No, he knew.
He knew.
But he literally was looking. Right. Remember last year he had that same sort of thing where he was looking around for the flag and it's like, oh, okay, then I'm going to do this. He's just kind of that next level kind of guy.
And we were talking about this in the office yesterday. I thought it was really impressive that offensive line didn't play great. Orlando Brown and Lucas Niang, the two new tackles for them, both gave up 5 pressures. On the interior, I thought they played a little bit better than on tackle, but still not great. And it looked like, unlike the Super Bowl, Mahomes knew that he was going to have to be part of the solution up front, right? Which was, I'm going to have to weave through the pocket. You could tell that he was intentional about most of the plays. Now, the last play where they just tried to dial up a throw and Myles Garrett dipped on Orlando Brown, sort of bending his waist and sacked him, that wasn't great. But I thought for the most part, Mahomes was part of the solution to winning in the passing game when your offensive line was 5 new starters full.
The stat that stood out to me in that game, Mahomes' average depth of target with no pressure, 4.5. He was taking all the underneath stuff. And that's what I think makes Mahomes special. It's not the highlight reels. It's the fact that he didn't do it in the Super Bowl as much, but he can play within structure, take what the defense gives you. But when he got outside the pocket, he was chucking it almost 20 yards down the field every single time. Of course, the 75-yarder is a part of it. But the fact that he could play within structure, and then, oh, by the way, if you let me get outside, I'm gonna crush you down the field. That was what makes it
that's
special.
what's so disheartening if you're a Cleveland fan, right? But because the fact of the matter is you should be able to make a mistake or two in a game, right? Like, not every drive needs to end in a touchdown. But for them, they knew it. They played. They went for 4th downs in the first half of the game. They knew they had to score on every possession to beat this Chiefs team because of what you said. Whereas Mahomes not only gives you the lightning, right? But like he takes everything, right? Where it's so hard to get a stop against the Chiefs. So on the other side, on offense, you know that you have to get 7 or 8 every single time. It's got to be frustrating.
Talking to Wink Martindale, he goes, no matter which conversation you're in about the greatest quarterbacks of all time, he goes, you have to include this kid. The greatest quarterbacks of all time. What is he now, in his 4th year or something like that? He said, you watch the way he checks them in and out of protections, the thing we were talking about he looks off to the side and sees the penalty flag, the ability to throw it up, to know when he does. The only question I have about Kansas City now is, can they keep playing this 2-man game? You know, I mean, it's really a 2-man game at this point that they're playing down the field, which is going to be really interesting.
They put themselves in this position in many ways because of the way that they've structured their cap, right? Like going out and getting Frank Clark, going out and getting Joe Thuney, the Orlando Brown situation, they haven't even signed him. But like when it came down to Juju Smith-Schuster in the offseason, it was a matter of they offered more than Pittsburgh. They just didn't offer $4 million more than Pittsburgh. So he goes back. They lost out on Josh Reynolds by a few $100,000. There was just not a receiver there for them. So they're kind of stuck, but they're stuck there because they don't have any slack because of the deals that they've made at defensive end and then eventually offensive line. It's just a showing what the cap means.
It'll be interesting to see if Kansas City can hold up. They've got big offensive linemen. 308's the smallest one they've got up there.
And they're a team, the previous team in the PFF era that had the highest Super Bowl win probability, starting the season with 5 new offensive linemen, was Green Bay in 2013. They were 7%. Kansas City, 0 offensive line returning, 14%. So twice as likely to win the Super Bowl as any other team in the history of our database with 5 new O-line.
All right, let's do one other subject. Then we'll get into some of these games. Green Bay. All right, so you go, all right, whatever. I've seen Tom Brady lose whatever it was, 30-0 on opening day. Big deal. They come back, have a great year. Aaron Rodgers is going to be fine. My question is, did all of that stuff impact the Green Bay Packers organization? In other words, is it too much to expect the unquestioned General Patton of your football team to have all of that stuff and come back in and just expect your football team to pick up and go?
I'll let you know after week 2, because I don't think so. I mean, we've seen Rodgers play that poorly a handful of times, but he's done it. And I think it just happened to be in week 1. Yeah. And when it happens in week 1, it's like, well, he's hosting Jeopardy and he's playing golf and his hair's too long and all these different things that you're trying to make excuses because it's week 1. But he did the same thing last year in week 6 against the Bucs. Same exact thing. But he always bounces back. This is the stat. When his PFF grade's under 50 the last 3 times, he comes back 4 touchdowns, no interceptions in each of those games. And he's probably going to do it on Monday Night Football against the Lions. So I'm going to say no, I'm not going to overreact.
Last year in week 1, the Browns lost. They finished 11-5. The Colts lost. They finished 11-5. The Dolphins lost. They finished 10-6. The Buccaneers lost. They finished 11-5, won the Super Bowl. And then additionally, the Titans didn't cover. They won a kind of an ugly game, finished 11-5. Week 1 is fun but we have to make sure that we weigh it properly. I think the one thing that's fundamental about the Green Bay Packers that we saw Sunday, though, is that they're soft. They're soft up front.
They got run all over.
Both sides of the ball, without Bakhtiari, without Lindsley. But on the defense side of the ball, they've been soft forever, and we saw it in the 19 NFC Championship game. We saw it last season at times against teams like Tampa Bay and against teams like Indianapolis, who are not a great team, but who are tough. Teams like that can have Green Bay.
So my other team that caught my eye this weekend were the Chargers. So we have forever sort of dismissed the Chargers as, oh, their offensive line's terrible and, whatever. Now they have Joey Bosa back, they have Derwin James back, and they have a quarterback that we're all assuming is going to take a step backwards. He's going to regress. How many times you hear the word regress around PFF? What if he doesn't? What if he doesn't? Maybe what if that's the first stepping stone of what Josh Allen did in year 3? He did it in year 1, and he goes forward from there.
I think part of the Justin Herbert story and the regression story is that he performed well under pressure last year and was under a ton of pressure. The way to curb that is to have an offensive line play as well as they did on Sunday. Rashawn Slater was fantastic in pass protection.
The whole group is new. It's like they brought them all in.
But it's like, it's kind of like the reason why we love, I think, team building season. I love March, right? Free agency and the draft is because you can watch a team like the Chargers piece by piece add Corey Lindsley and add Matt Filer and then say they got to go into the draft and probably have to draft a tackle and it's Rashawn Slater. And all of a sudden, the Chargers offensive line looks like a potential strength. And then you start to see it in action here in week 1. So now Herbert's got cleaner pockets to play from. And he's got some skills, man. That arm is incredible. It plays. And that last drive, where it was first down after first down after first down to shut the game down, that was impressive. That was not something Herbert really showed at Oregon.
Do we have the same questions, though, about them? Because I agree. Offensive line is fantastic. Herbert was very impressive. A lot of the stuff came on third down, which is, again, he finds ways to do well in unstable situations. But that Chargers offense, are they like Kansas City's in that they're too top-heavy? Keenan Allen's one of the best wide receivers in football. But after that, it's a struggle for them. And last week, their targets were contested 31% of the time by opposing defensive backs. The only team that had more contested targets last week was Tennessee, who none of us will argue schemed good offense last week. So it is one of those things where I wonder about them, how fragile they are on offense because they're so top-heavy, throwing to a Keenan Allen and sort of needing him to be the guy, not necessarily having a secondary option there.
One of the interesting games that looked like a nothing game, maybe at the start of the season, San Francisco at Philadelphia. All of a sudden, you're going, what? Yeah. Jalen Hurts. I remember watching the game at the end of the year where they bench him, and the whole thing, and I go, man, this team really likes playing for Jalen Hurts. You could tell there was a disappointment that happened when that all came about. And then on the defensive side, Javon Hargrave, and some of the things start looking Slay in his second year and all the different things. Is this a team that is possible to have one more run with Fletcher Cox and Brandon Graham and that whole deal? Or was that just totally Atlanta stinks?
It's both, right? Atlanta looked bad. As good as the Eagles looked, Atlanta did look bad. Now, I do think when you're analyzing the Eagles this offseason, you could talk yourself into both paths. You could talk yourself into the path that Brandon Graham and Fletcher Cox are getting older. It's a new offensive line. We don't really know about Jalen Hurts. It's rebuilding season. You can also talk yourself into Jalen Hurts adds an element to the run game. It raises the floor of the offense because they're going to run the ball effectively. QB runs are more efficient. It opens up the rest of the offense. It opens up open throws in the pass game. And if Hurts just hits a few more open throws, which he was spectacular at, that sounds simple, but that's the most important part of quarterbacking.
And that's what he was coming out of college. He was like our most accurate guy, right?
But you have to be able to continuously hit those easy buttons. And I wonder sometimes. So here's an example. His average depth of target was 3.5 the other day, right? So like they're hitting the easy buttons, and against a team like Atlanta, right? That is, you can press that edge so much more. But here's a positive thing. And I'm looking at a lot of these like KPI type things where it's like, oh, the best 5 teams in the NFL all went 5-0 doing this. All the worst 5 went 0-5. RPO percentage last week, Miami was first at 36%. Philly was second at 30%. They're using RPOs in 30% of plays. LA was third with 26%. Those teams all won last week. You look at the 5 teams that used RPOs the least, Atlanta, Tennessee used him none. Both lost. New England lost. Detroit lost. Jets lost.
It's freaky to watch teams play against Patrick Mahomes. So that's what I've been studying this week, because they run so many of these RPOs, and the backside linebacker literally does not move. He does not in the hit.
Stay in that slant lane, right?
So the ball is running over here, and these linebackers their whole lives have been trained to pursue and the inside out and all the things that they're. He does not move because Mahomes might pull that ball out and throw that backside slant to them.
Yeah, I've been saying that for a couple of years now. If you go to pff.com, hopefully everybody's an elite subscriber here, and you go check out premium stats and look at the linebacker grades over the last couple of years, and they're down, right? Because everything offensive coordinators are doing is trying to make linebackers wrong, and then safeties when they're in the box. Yeah. Everything, like you just said, you've learned to do this, this, and this. Well, guess what? I'm going to use that against you. When you do that, I'm going to throw it behind you, or you have to tackle a quarterback in the open field like Lamar Jackson, take on a pulling guard, get 10 yards of depth in a zone coverage, cover a running back out of the backfield.
And what are the great defenses doing now? The great defenses now are saying, look, I'm going to get this mammoth guy in the middle, Vita Vea, who can eat up blockers so that I can play 4-1-6, right, and not have linebackers on the field. But it requires a little bit of gamesmanship up front. You got to have guys that can eat blockers, and you have to have defensive backs who are multiple and being able to sort of move around. Last week, I thought it was interesting to bring back up the LA Chargers. The LA Rams, the LA Chargers, two highest teams, both showed the same coverage that they played about 50% of the time.
The disguise factor,
which is
right?
Extremely low. But being able to do that, right, puts more pressure. Anytime you can turn the deception from the offense's sort of toolkit to your own, you have a chance to win.
All right, I'm going to bring up another team here, the Rams, that I got a chance to see the week before. I swear to you, you'd have thought the Rams had like some magic spell that they finally got to show off. I mean, they were like, we are going to kill these guys. They wasn't saying that, but the look in the conversations I was having was with the defensive players, and they were like, Matthew Stafford is going to light these guys up. We've got the number one defense. He's been lighting us up. He's going to light them up. And darned if he didn't, So are we buying the LA Rams? Is that defense going to hold with Woods as the new coordinator? And is Matthew Stafford really that difference maker?
I've spent the whole offseason not completely buying in, but buying into the fact that they're better. I mean, they're better with Matthew Stafford, and I couldn't wait to see Stafford with McVay in that offense. And I think we saw that right away. The Bears were equally bad, though. I mean, the secondary, the busted coverage, it was 20 yards of separation for Cooper Kupp. Slot corner didn't
touch him down, all that
right.
stuff.
So there was some ugly stuff in there from the Bears, but the playbook is opened up with the Rams. Jared Goff, one of the lowest big-time throw rates in the league the last couple of years. Stafford brings that element. He brings the out-of-structure element. And when you're team building, one of my favorite things to do is to roll 4 deep at receiver. Give me guys that are tough to cover. And when Deshaun Jackson is your 4 and he's still that fast, you are putting defenses in a bind. So the Rams have that going for them. They've got a good play caller, and Stafford does open things up. So I'm buying at least that element of it.
As weird as that is, they are stable on offense. To your point, Steve, I think that's a great point, which is if one of these guys gets hurt, right? You signed Deshaun Jackson not because you want him to play 16 games, but because you want him to kill another team, like to give you a cheat code 2 games out of the year, while other teams basically the Eagles built their offense around him, and then when he got injured, they're like, "What me worry?" Like at least the Rams did the right thing, and they supplemented what was a great receiving core. My issue is for them defensively, how they do a lot of great things. Like for example, they had fewer than 5 guys in the box against the Bears, even though the Bears were running on them, right?
Inviting them to run.
Because they said, okay, if we make Andy Dalton cross the street a million times, he's going to get hit by a car. That's just going to be what happens. And they, to me, the teams that can probably beat them, could catch them on a week where like either Donald or Ramsey are not healthy, or can be a team that is patient enough to play that game, right? Like when Kansas City played Buffalo on that Monday night last year, where it's Buffalo's playing that same defense. We're going to invite you to run. If a team is disciplined enough to run the football at 5-6 yards of crack on them, and then their quarterback can make plays, which that was what the Bears couldn't do, they can maybe win. I don't know if that can happen this week with Indy. I think Indy can run on them, but I don't know if Carson Wentz can make enough plays against them.
We'll see next week against the Bucs too, because they made the Bucs offense look bad last year because the Rams are so good at taking away the deep ball, and of course the Bears didn't even challenge them down the field. It is new age defense.
Like if you could spread, like my approach to playing the Rams would be to play 4 wide receivers and to run the football against that spread out defense, because again, they're inviting you to do it. The problem is like they're making a calculated gamble that once a drive they can stop the run for 1 or 2 yards and then get that team in long yardage
or a penalty or a fumble
something stupid
or
like
something.
That. Yeah. Right.
I mean, that's what happened to Cleveland.
Yep.
I mean, Kansas City's just basically going, you want to run? Go ahead. You know, all right, we got to.
You punch one ball out, the game's over.
Punch the ball out, and that's it.
What did you think of Jalen Ramsey in his role? Because it was like late career Woodson. Woodson went from shutdown corner to we're going to put you in the slot. You're a slot corner by name, but you're a linebacker, you're a safety. I mean, Jalen's getting dirty in the run game, blowing up screens. He's one of the best corners in the league, and they're using him in the slot a ton.
Yeah, and because they don't put that much pressure on their back end anyway. That's sort of that shell coverage, and they're not going to give up the deep ball. So if you're not going to give up the deep ball anyway, why do you need him playing cornerback? Yeah. Just unleash the hounds a little bit and bring him up in the box. I mean, he had 3 out of 4 plays to start that game. I was like, he's going to have 100 tackles at this rate, the way that he's going. It's been unbelievable. The other game that that stuck out to me a little bit, or the other team I wanted to talk about, was the Raiders. And, I thought the Raiders defensively were completely different than what they've been. They were not breaking down. They were not making big mistakes. They were consistently with that sort of, Seattle 3 coverage, covering up, they're single high, but it was because the tight end was in this. So this cornerback would fly back and cover up that deep over route. And that they were on a lot of different things, but probably watching Crosby and Ngakoue rush the edge was maybe the most exciting part of the whole thing from the Raiders standpoint. And they legitimately look like they're not going to be awful on defense this year. And if that's the case, right? Because right now the West is 8-0.
Right.
Right? Yeah. The West hasn't lost yet. Al Michaels is losing his mind. I've never seen him so happy because he thinks that we're going to do all games on the West Coast now. So, but is it possible that this thing is finally coming together now that they have a defense?
Yeah, and they didn't miss that many tackles, right? Like before, it was always an issue of, because most teams don't want to rush the Baltimore Ravens upfield because they're afraid of the skill position players, Lamar Jackson mostly, of getting loose on them. But the Raiders did a pretty good job of getting players on the ground. Like they were just solid defensively. And, for a team, their season win total on the betting markets was 6.5 or 7. And I get it. They have a tough schedule, but it's really hard for them to be bad if their defense is, let's say, 20th in the NFL. And you have on offense Derek Carr with a decent offensive line and Darren Waller. It's awfully hard to be bad when your offense has a play caller like Gruden, a quarterback that's as good as Carr, and weapons like starting with Waller, but also supplementing with guys like Kenyon Drake and Henry Ruggs and guys that played well the other night later on, at least. I think this Raiders team is going to be a lot better. It's starting this week as 5.5-point underdogs in Pittsburgh. I think they're going to surprise some people. They're going to be a pest in the AFC.
Yeah, it's all about their defense, though. I mean, because I think what you described on offense, they created offense last year despite offensive line injuries.
They've been a good team.
But they looked fast on defense. You mentioned Ngakoue and Crosby flying off the ball. Now, we'll see how bad that Ravens offensive line is. They had an injured Ronnie Stanley and my guy, Alejandro Villanueva, struggling badly at right tackle, moving from the left to the right side. But they had the highest pass rush grade by far in the NFL. Casey Hayward, underrated signing because he's played in that system, had a history of success. My concern with the Raiders is that they didn't do enough this offseason, but the Hayward signing, the Yannick Ngakoue signing, KJ Wright's going to help. Some of those veterans, I think, are going to help and have them closer to at least middle of the pack as far as the defense goes.
So Lamar Jackson, I've been watching him getting ready for the game too. And the one thing that I noticed about it was really bad, right? Villanueva was getting bull rushed in. Ronnie Stanley was getting bull rushed in. And a lot of his drops were at about 7 yards. So these edges would come around and then they would sort of go horizontal. They would start vertical and then they just pinch back in. And so at 7 yards, then they're getting a push and the pocket was really messy. And then later in the game, they had a couple of 3rd and long situations, and he dropped back to like 10, 11 yards, Russell Wilson style, and then stepped up. So now that outside pass rush, instead of going up and turning in, had to sort of stay vertical to go get him. Well, now you stay vertical. You get 10 yards deep with Lamar Jackson, and you have 2 defensive tackles standing in front of you. No way in hell they're getting him on the ground, right? So I just keep thinking that there are ways for this offense to get it going again where they don't have to have him be that Ben Roethlisberger stiff-arming, guys to get a pass off. I mean, that's not who he is. That's never going to be who he is.
Yeah, and I think this is a tough one for Baltimore because they're deciding whether or not to pay him the everything deal at quarterback. And the issue, and I think what I think fortunate for them right now in the mess that they're in is they're getting to see what happens when you have a quarterback on that kind of deal, which is you get injuries places and you need your quarterback to overcome things. And on Monday night, he wasn't quite able to. I think that they should take this time that they have now with the banged up offensive line, with no real running game or running backs, to sort of find out if they can craft a passing game with Lamar Jackson that is effective, because so far in his career, he's been very efficient as a passer in a system that has been almost perfect for him. I don't know if you can pay him the $50 million a year or whatever it's going to cost if we have to constantly make excuses for what's going on around him.
It's an interesting theory you're talking about, because you're saying Ravens need to play the long game here, essentially, because they still, for whatever the numbers were, they still ran for 189. 86 of those were Lamar Jackson. As far as like getting yards on the ground, whether it's from the design run game or a few scrambles here and there, the Ravens have always been efficient. They're the team that runs for 230 and you don't even notice it that much because it's just what they do. But the pass game is the whole, right? I mean, he's been efficient when the game flow is good. In that MVP season, he'd have games 15 for 19 for 5 touchdowns. That is a compliment to their run first attack, open throws created because Lamar's such a dynamic runner. But what you're saying, stepping up Lamar wants to be a pocket passer. He likes being in the pocket. He likes to scramble to throw, not to run. So yeah, it's an interesting one because I don't think they have the weapons to create an effective pass game. And I think that's where the hole has been for the Ravens.
Well, and the other thing, though, that you know out of Kansas City is that when they start getting stuck and people are running the football on them, like Cleveland did last week, you're going to see man coverage and you're going to see blitzing because, they're not built. They're built like the old Colts were with Peyton Manning. Give me the edge rushers. Give me people that can, go get out, because we're going to be in shootouts. We're going to be that. And so the teams that can run the football potentially can give them problems until Cleveland dropped the punt, until Cleveland fumbled the ball, until they
control the game.
They were controlling the game. Yeah. But you have to be perfect when you're playing that. And that's what makes you crazy. Speaking of perfect, let's go on to Justin Fields now. Now, I spent my entire offseason, I feel like, watching Justin Fields and trying to predetermine whether or not, this is the right thing to do. And the one thing you don't want to do with a quarterback is you don't want to train him to have bad habits. You don't want him, every time he doesn't know what he's seeing, to take off and run. Mm-hmm. You would rather have him, like the other night, there's no doubt Andy Dalton was throwing the ball in 2 seconds or less because he knew they weren't going to hold up with that offensive line. Until you've actually seen that in an NFL game, you can't understand that. But at some point, the talent of Justin Fields is just going to scream too loudly, and they're going to have to put him in. What would you do with Justin Fields at this point?
I would start him this week against Cincinnati. Because I think that all the things you said about LA are true, but and Cincinnati's defense is better than what they used to be. But this is like the perfect. You're at home. You're facing a defense that I don't think is terrible, but I don't think is scaring you. The hard part, I think, is just like now they've pinned themselves into this narrative corner where Andy has deserved this respect that Alex Smith deserved, which I never got the comparison because Alex he had been the chief starter for multiple years in the playoffs, so forth. And now it's like, well, you gave him the Chicago game. I don't think Dalton played poorly against LA, right? Like he didn't play that badly. He didn't turn the ball over a ton. The turnover it wasn't really his fault, all this stuff. And so like you bind yourself to this, right? Where your team really needs a quarterback that will elevate everybody. And so there's always going to be excuses for the quarterback that's in there where it's like, well, he didn't have a whole lot to go on, and he continues to buy himself starts that I think will happen in winnable games. Like if Andy Dalton plays from wire to wire this week, your Bengals are going to be 2-0, right? And I think that's my biggest problem is you consistently if you don't just rip the Band-Aid off, you're going to be consistently giving yourself license to start Dalton. And in a division that's currently 0-4, you actually have a shot and you should take that shot immediately.
Is my view too idealistic that Andy Dalton should have nothing to do with this?
I'm totally with you.
It should only be about Justin Fields.
Totally
I have this take on every single rookie quarterback. Jared Goff in 2016, it was like him or Case Keenum. I said, when Jared Goff's ready, he plays. That's it. If you're 10-0, doesn't matter. When Jared Goff's ready, he plays. It's all about his development. When Justin Fields is ready, he plays. It doesn't matter if you have Andy Dalton at quarterback, Alex Smith. It shouldn't matter because if the Bears the Bears should only care about Justin Fields' development, and that's it. And I don't know what the answer is for that development. I don't know if sitting is better. I don't know if there's a piece of the playbook he's just not getting. I don't know if they need him. Blitz recognition, getting rid of the ball quick. I don't know what it is. But if you feel like it's missing, then don't play him. Once he gets it, whatever that is, you play him. Because it doesn't, like winning week 2 in 2021 has nothing to do with the Bears' future. Justin Fields is the Bears' future.
But don't you think John Fox, the former head coach of the Bears, would have, because like you draft a quarterback high and you get all the assurances that you're going to work together, and you start Mike Glennon 5 games, right? And then you get Trubisky for 11. It's a bad season and you're fired. Like that to me again, like, and again, this is the same ownership. This is the same stuff. And so for me, I'm thinking also from Matt Nagy's perspective, you're in a division that is winnable. You're in a division, you're playing games. Like I think the Bengals are much improved, but you're playing a game in week 2 that's winnable. And I just have a hard time believing that a quarterback is ready to start in week 5 that isn't ready to start in week 2.
And that might be true. All I'm saying is, in an ideal world, I have a coach who doesn't care about losing his job. I have and he might be, but
he should be though.
I know, but if he's making decisions for my franchise to save his job, then he should be out now. If he's making decisions to make the Bears better in 2022, 23, 24, then that's what I want.
The one that I really had not overly factored in my own mind, like I saw Fields get hit in the side of the head where clearly it was his read. They slid the line away. He was responsible for that guy. He almost got his head taken off. And there were a lot of balls in preseason that he had a guy who was open quickly, that he did the college thing. He pulled it down. He danced around. He tried to make a play. It's not going to work. In the NFL, you get somebody open, they get the ball. It doesn't matter anything about it. But after watching them play, and they're going to have issues on the offensive line. So, I mean, you can find guys to run block. David Montgomery was their best player in that game. But if you have David Montgomery with Andy Dalton handing it off on those read options, the backside guy is crashing. He's just crashing. They don't care if Andy Dalton runs the ball or not. You do that with Justin Fields back there, and even if Justin Fields only runs 4 times a game, you don't want that sucker out on your edge going for 20 yards and maybe 80 yards. Yeah. So if that's the best thing that you do as an offense, can you live with the fact that he is going to have to learn on the fly when it comes to the passing game? Because he's not there. In my opinion, he's not even close to there on the passing game. But are these plus plays so necessary to give you a chance that you almost have to?
Well, and I think that's what the Eagles' reality is right now too, right? Like I joked about this on the PFF live show, which is on every Sunday morning, where we were arguing about this idea where it's just like, if you're gonna lose game, I'm not saying you're losing games on purpose, but if you're gonna give yourself a chance to more likely lose by playing a quarterback because you're not ready for the quarterback you have to play a certain game. There's plenty of ways to do that with Justin Fields playing, right? You could run the ball on early downs more often. And to Chris's point, you could do them and have them be plays where the quarterback runs and it lifts your floor, right? Like the Eagles did that this week with Hurts. Like he's not a perfect passer either. He's nowhere near close to being there yet. But you give yourself a chance to win by making the defense play left-handed a little bit. And again, like I agree with you, Steve. I agree that if Nagy knows that it's his job forever, right? And they're really worried about what could happen if they threw him out there, a David Carr situation. Like I get all that, but I think that the NFL moves too fast to make some of those considerations, especially given the Bears' track record in supporting such a decision already.
Yeah, and look, I don't know that there's a clean answer. For as many guys that sat and learned and were good, there were that many guys who just went in and took their bumps and took their lumps and they were fine. I think the offense is better with Justin Fields. I mean, I think they're better. Watching him in the preseason, you have to defend the entire field. They roll him out. He loved playing outside of structure in the preseason, maybe too much, and I think that's part of the concern is creating those bad habits.
How about Arizona? Are they real? That was not some bum of a team. That was in Tennessee, one of the favorites, no question, at least to win that division. How did that one happen?
The defense was really good. And now look, Kyler was awesome, led the league in big-time throws, 6 of them in that game. Put Christian Kirk in the slot, created mismatches. DeAndre Hopkins is really good. They're using Rondale Moore. They're using playmakers. Kyler's tough to defend because every now and again he's going to scramble around, find a guy. I could not believe after all offseason, it looked like the worst cornerback room in the NFL, and those dudes played man coverage. Byron Murphy was awesome. Robert Alford was really good. Those guys were good. And
yeah,
on paper,
they're killing the quarterback on the other team.
But they were pressured. But the other thing, schematically, Buda Baker's playing all over the field, and Isaiah Simmons. They've got versatile middle of the field defenders, and then the pass rush with Chandler Jones was fantastic, and JJ up front. I mean, there's a lot of good pieces on this
I got
team.
a story for you guys. It happened Tuesday this week. Okay, because I think our coverage versus pass rush discussion assumes a functional offense, right? And when we did our win simulation, it came out Tennessee went from a projected 9 or 10 wins to a projected 5 wins. And of course that's wrong. So I went back and looked as to why. And Tennessee's offensive coordinator, Todd Downing, was 11 standard deviations worse than average. And if you look at everything that's done, you look at play action rate, they were second worst in the NFL. They did not run an RPO this past week. They did not negotiate box counts very well. They led the NFL in receivers that were contested, right, on targets. It was probably, and again, I'm not trying to take anything away from Arizona because they clearly took advantage of all the things. Tennessee probably had the worst schemed game offensively of any team in the NFL in week 1. So what that allows you to do as a defense is to be able to take advantage, sort of flip the script on an offense and say, our coverage might be bad, but Tennessee's in no position to take advantage of it because they're playing a suboptimal offense. And I think that's what happened. I'd be interested to see. I mean, the Minnesota Vikings this past week against the Bengals were every bit as dysfunctional on offense, jumping off sides, not running play action, doing all that kind of stuff. If they repeat that this week against Arizona, if they're in as many 2nd and 20s as they were last week, I think the Arizona defense can do the exact same thing. And, so at least for this week, I think Arizona's for real.
And for Tennessee, they became good by doing the opposite,
Yes.
by running a ton of play action, turning Ryan Tannehill from average starter into high-end, efficient quarterback.
He looked like the Dolphins Tannehill because he wasn't given all the advantages that an Arthur Smith offense gives. Now, Arthur Smith had a lot more of a negative advantage coming out of Tennessee than he had a positive advantage going to Atlanta. But but you certainly saw the Tennessee offense when they were trying to play square with other teams. They're not that good.
So the Dallas Cowboys come out and play well. They play well against the world champs. They had a chance, have the lead until Brady was Brady. I mean, they were literally 1 first down away from having a kick to end the game at the end of it, right? Now DeMarcus Lawrence goes down. And, it's not even close. He's their best defensive player. They're playing a lot of people over there. They're rotating all their linebackers in. They're doing a lot of different things. But can they overcome the loss of DeMarcus Lawrence?
Yeah, La'el Collins, too, on the offensive line. That's not a good one either. I mean, the thing that I liked about Dallas last week was they started the game 9.5-point underdogs, and they opened the game as if they were down by 10 points, right? They
attacked. Yeah.
They attacked. They threw the ball. They had the highest early down passing rate early in games of any team in the NFL. So to answer Chris's question, can they overcome DeMarcus Lawrence? They'll have to by scoring more. Like and I think at least they have the worldview now that they have to, right? Like that's, to me, the most impressive thing about Dallas on Thursday Night Football was instead of saying we have to shorten the game to beat Tampa Bay, they said, no, we have to play good football to beat Tampa Bay. And for the most part, they did. They played to their capabilities. And I think if they do that, if you look at their schedule, they'll be able to win 10 games playing to their capabilities every week, even with a bad defense.
The two questions I have: did they do that because they were playing Tampa Bay? Which is, you have to be aggressive, but also, do you really want to run the ball when you've got a banged up offensive line and Vita Vea and all those dudes on the other side? Do you really want to do that? And when does this strategy start to just feel uncomfortable for the Cowboys? Because before Dak got hurt, this was their strategy. Put the ball in Dak's hands. We're going to chuck it around. And they started scoring 30 points and 35 points, and he's throwing like crazy. And we're over here cheering. Like, that's the right way to run offense. But boy, you got to stop somebody defensively. At what point do the Cowboys look and say, we think we're running the right strategy, which was pass early, score as many points as possible, but we're not actually winning games? And they start to revert back to, we got to put the ball in Zeke's hands.
How much of it, though, do you think was a result of Vita Vea and Ndamukong Suh and all those guys playing on that defensive line?
I think it was a factor.
To me, it just looked like they listen, we can't beat these guys. We can beat these guys, but I don't know that it carries over week to week. Maybe it will. I don't know.
But I'll say this. It's better that they were able to assess that and acted rationally than it is that they wouldn't, right? Like I think there's a lot of football coaches in the NFL that would say, look, I know that we're undermanned, but we just have to be better than them, right? Like, at least, I'm choosing to look at this positively, which is to say the Dallas Cowboys accurately assessed their disadvantages and press their advantages, which was against a very good defense and a good secondary. They are able to use 3 wide receivers. Now Gallup's hurt, so that sucks for them. But they were able to press their advantage on the outside. And if I hope they come out of that game thinking that worked, because they did exceed expectations on Thursday. I would hate for them to come out of the game and see, oh, look, throwing the ball a lot's not going to work. We better go back to handing it off to Zeke every time, because against a team like the Chargers this week on the road, that's not going to be a winning advantage, a winning strategy.
All offseason, I said Dallas should be doing that. That's their advantage, right? Spread to throw the ball like crazy, score 30 points as fast as you can, and turn to Dan Quinn and say, keep it under 30. And, they gave up 31.
If they would have done that, it would have
worked.
Yeah.
To be honest, though, it's probably closer than it should have been, because Chris Godwin fumbles inside the 5. Ronald Jones fumbles in their own territory. I mean, there were turnovers that kept Dallas in that game as well. But offense is cooking, and they should continue to move the ball like that.
Taylor Heineke, we saw him be great in the playoffs a season ago. Can he? I mean, this is a defensive-oriented football team, right? I mean, we know how they're going to be built. Is he enough to keep them in this division? Or has Philadelphia and what we saw out of Dallas now sort of made us all go, hey, maybe this is still Philly and Dallas?
I think Taylor Heineke would have been enough to win the 2020 NFC East.
Well,
I think
true.
When you look at this year,
George Blanda might have.
You have Josh Allen, Matt Ryan, Jameis Winston, Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, Teddy Bridgewater played great last week, Tom Brady, and then they skip a week with the Panthers, Russell Wilson, and then Derek Carr are, after this week, the next quarterbacks they face on their schedule. And so it's just really hard when you have that quarterback disadvantage every single game to be a good football team. And so, look, if they can get through that stretch, 5 and 7, then the 5 of their last 5 games are against NFC East, and they'll be in an okay position. I just fear that they're only favored in 3 games all year. So to me, it's just the deck was stacked against Washington from the jump this year.
Even if it was Fitz at quarterback.
And even if it was Fitz,
yeah. You study the quarterbacks as much as anybody. Mac Jones was the best in college with our numbers. He was the best in preseason. He's the best in week 1 of those young quarterbacks. Probably should have gotten a win, right off the bat. The Patriots defensively look like they might be back, and is Mac Jones enough now with 7 teams in the playoffs, is he enough to get them there?
I think so. I mean, they did lose a game. It was a fumble at the end. They did lose a game that historically with Brady and all that stuff. Not that Brady would stop the fumble. They just usually win those games. So it's weird that they're 1-0 with all the things that they did at the end. Mac Jones leading the comeback, but he panicked on his first drop back. Was terrible. He spiked it backwards. I mean, just on purpose. It was horrible. Panicked. After that point, he was incredible. I mean, just rushers in his face, his accuracy under pressure, dropped it in on a wheel route, deep comeback. I mean, he showed it all. It was very much like Alabama, except guys aren't as open. But if, for as much as we quantify stuff, if you want to say it factor and all that stuff, I do think Mac Jones has passed all those tests, whether it was a training camp, practice against the Giants where he goes 35 for 40, or running no huddle in preseason, or this game against the Dolphins where they only scored 16 points, but he was impressive and took what was there. I mean, I think they're good. I think Mac Jones is good, and the Patriots are going to be a very difficult team to beat.
Yeah, I'm not as big. Like, I don't understand the position as well as either of you guys do, but like when he moved around in the pocket, he looked like a veteran. And I had a bet. So Greenline had Miami and under. So I was sweating out that end of that game. And it was crazy because the Dolphins were a team that were 25th in yards per play last year allowed, first in turnovers generated. And they repeated that on Sunday, right? They gave up 400 yards total offense, but they got turnovers in big spots. And they end up winning a game that, as Steve said, New England probably should have won.
Everybody loved watching Zach Wilson in college and in preseason, little dose of reality, right? And I think if you're a naysayer on playing Justin Fields right away, maybe watching Zach Wilson in the first week of preseason, he was fine. He did okay. He made some plays. But there is a reality to playing on opening day in the NFL.
Yeah, I didn't see a linebacker on a pass. Tried to I think what quarterbacks need to learn, this is where Fields passed his test in the preseason, your athleticism outside the pocket. And, Fields tries to juke a defender, and Wilson tried to juke a defender and fumbles and stuff. So he settled down, though. He settled down in the second half, started to make some more throws. But all these rookies should have some of their ups and downs.
As somebody who had a Jets +5 ticket, I was certainly happy with how he rebounded, even though the 2-point conversion would have covered that. But he had 3 turnover-worthy throws, right? And they were all worthy of that distinction. He took a hit on the second touchdown drive that where he head ricocheted off he's not seeing things right as well as veterans are, but there were a couple throws where he got outside the pocket, and I mean he didn't even have to have his feet set, and he was zipping passes without much on a rope for
good arm,
50
good
yards,
athleticism doing that,
and his receivers for the most part, like I thought Corey Davis played okay, but for the most part they weren't elevating him. So it's going to be a long season maybe for the Jets. I don't know. I think they'll play tough, but he was a rookie. He was impressive for a rookie in week 1.
And are you doing the take back on the Josh Allen, whole through the table thing and all that? Are you? Because you apologize, now you're going to apologize for apologizing. What's the story? I was listening the other day.
So the PFF NFL podcast on Monday, my Josh Allen jersey's in. We're going to have an apology form, so I'll apologize for just, doubting Josh Allen. Sam also, in case Josh Allen is bad again on Sunday, we're going to have an apology form so I can revert it back to my initial take. We'll have both of them available. But because we raised $2,000 for charity, I do have to sign the apology form while wearing his jersey.
He couldn't buy a basket the other day. Oh my! I was watching that game and it was just. I mean, because he was pressured for sure, but he was getting to places in the pocket, and it's just he could not make a throw. And maybe that's the thing that we didn't understand about Pittsburgh is that defense. Even if they lose Steven Nelson, even if they lose Bud Dupree, even if they, their offense doesn't help them at all, which their offense didn't help them at all Sunday, they're still a great defense.
They're the same team they were last year. It's exactly what they were.
They played completely different, which was fascinating. They were rushing 4, and Melvin Ingram is a huge upgrade over Bud Dupree. They were getting after him.
Melvin Ingram is $1. I don't understand. Good on the Steelers, but Melvin Ingram was $1 bill laying on the ground. I don't understand how he took all the way. I mean,
people are scared of availability.
Well, they're
scared of injuries.
He also didn't have any sacks last year, and teams pay for sacks. They don't pay for pressure.
Listen,
Melvin Ingram has a lot of pressures.
Buy PFF IQ and learn that you're not paying for sacks. You're paying for PFF pass rush grade, and that's what's going to lead to future sacks. But Allen missed 2 deep shots that completely changed the narrative and changed the game, and that was 2019 Allen missing open deep shots. that kind of reverted back on Sunday.
So I'm going to run down the PFF top players by position in week 1, just because this is interesting stuff.
Yeah.
And you guys can feel free to chime in. But Tom Brady was the top quarterback, 93, despite having a couple interceptions.
They weren't his fault.
What do you think about my official score? I want an official score in football. I want to know how many real interceptions.
I heard you on the broadcast. All you do is you tell people to use our turnover-worthy play metric. Because Brady came out of that game with 5 big-time throws, no turnover-worthy plays, because the Hail Mary, that's an unlucky interception. The other one was a drop from Leonard Fournette. Dak had 2 turnover-worthy plays. Neither one was intercepted. And then he hits his receiver in the hands, and it's tipped up for an interception.
His best throw of the night was picked off.
Right.
Yeah.
So you use PFF, and you use our turnover-worthy play metric.
There you go. Or maybe you'll be the official score.
I will.
That'd be good. Running back, the best running back of the week. You want to take a guess?
David Montgomery.
I think I saw your sheet. It was Joe Mixon.
Joe Mixon. There you go.
He played good too. David Montgomery was really good too.
David Montgomery was really good. Wide receiver, Tyreek Hill. That was fairly easy. He was doing his thing.
I looked up after that game and saw that he had 197 yards, and I was like, he just makes that look ordinary now.
Very ordinary. Very ordinary.
Subtle play that we gave him credit for too. He saved an interception. Mahomes threw it up, and Tyreek pulls the defender for an offensive pass interference. It would have been an interception, so he takes the penalty, and it actually saved a turnover.
Very, very smart football player.
But he and Kelsey both have learned to adjust in space. I mean, Tyreek made a couple of adjustments inside a zone, sort of peeling back, gearing down. I go, uh-oh, you got a guy that comes off the ball looking like a rocket ship, and nobody even plays hooks against him. You almost look at him and you go, they could throw him 20 straight hooks, and nobody is going to stand anywhere close to what he was.
Not to belabor this, but the interesting thing, when you look at like accuracy measurements for quarterbacks, like accuracy above expect, Mahomes always finishes like 10th in those. And I think the reason is that offense, the quarterback, but also the receivers, engineer throws where the accuracy is trivial, right? Where you're so wide open that it doesn't have to be on the right shoulder, where it's a really interesting aspect of their offense.
Did you hear Travis Kelce on the Monday Night Football broadcast? I mean, he was telling Peyton and Eli, I kind of just give Mahomes a glance, and I'm just going to get, it really is backyard football. He's saying, what's the route? I don't know. I'm going to get open. And is there a better
Kelsey's NGS speed the last 4 years has declined because he no longer has to be the plus athlete he was with Alex Smith. He does just like waddle around the middle of the field and make plays.
But you can make so much quicker breaks when you're doing that. When you're running full speed, breaks are hard to do. Yeah. When you're like jogging around, you can do really like you're playing basketball kind of thing. I will give Denzel Ward a little credit though. Denzel Ward played Tyreek when he had him. He played him about as bravely as anybody I've seen. So let me run down the list here. Gronkowski was our top tight end, having 3 contested catches and the one out of the helicopter.
Plus
I don't
the
know
blocking
if that one counted or not. Yeah, and then Elton Jenkins, tackle, was our top. Joel Bitonio in Cleveland. Frank Ragnow, who is really kind of becoming what we thought he was going to be coming out of college. Cameron Hayward was unbelievable. Chandler Jones, unbelievable. Levante David in that game. As always, the guy that you don't always recognize what he's doing in a game, but in coverage, they just never get anything done against him. Casey Hayward Jr. was
low-key good acquisition for the Las Vegas defense.
No doubt about it. And Derwin James, how about that coming right? It was like everybody who came back and was great in this thing. All right, I want some quick. I want to just go down the list. And I want to hear what the spread is, and then I want you guys picking it. So Giants at Washington, even though this will probably be on after that. What's the spread?
Washington's laying 3.5.
Okay.
I'll take Washington.
As much as you hate Washington, I took Washington too in this one, even though Daniel Jones is 4-0.
This is the one game they got to get.
Yeah. I think the Giants will play better this week, though.
But God, can they block these guys?
No, I don't think so. Nate Solder had some ugly reps.
How about Andrew Thomas? He was better.
He was better in week 1. He was much better, but
because we liked him coming out of college.
Yeah, he struggled mightily last year. He was much better in week 1, but he didn't have the Vaughn side. Nate Solder had Vaughn on his side.
Yeah. New England at the Jets. Mac Jones, Zach Wilson. Who you guys liking?
New England is laying 6 on the road. I'll take the Jets. getting those points.
I took the Jets to cover, but the Patriots win.
Yeah.
The whole Belichick versus rookie quarterback thing.
So you're both taking the Jets there.
Yeah.
It's 6?
Mm-hmm.
6 is a lot.
That's a lot.
On the road for the Pats.
Rookie quarterback laying 6.
Pats are playing close games too, unless they get special teams touchdowns in that whole deal.
Denver at Jacksonville.
Jacksonville is getting 6 at home as well. Another rookie quarterback getting 6. I think the
Denver
number
put up some points, man, the other day.
The numbers would suggest to take Jacksonville. Like a home dog of 6 or more is against a quarterback like Bridgewater. Although Teddy covers spreads, but I'll take Jacksonville. I'm not happy about it though.
I'm the same thing. I'm taking Jacksonville. I think Trevor Lawrence will be better, and Teddy comes down to earth just a touch.
Yeah.
You guys are worse than you and George, man. You just picked the same
I know.
thing.
These are
Let's
all,
disagree, Steve.
I've already written them in my spreadsheet here.
Buffalo Bills at Miami Dolphins.
I took Buffalo in this.
What's the point?
Covering 3.5 on the road.
The best bet in this game is under 47.5, but I will go.
Yeah, that's big.
I'll take Miami on this side.
Just for the show.
Just for the
take
show.
Miami to mix it up.
Everybody, you can always change. Nobody will ever know. San Francisco at Philadelphia. This is the ultimate test of do you believe here. I mean, this is right. San Francisco, it was a cakewalk. We're going, okay, they're all the way back. Now they have 2 quarterbacks instead of 1, and then they almost blew the game at the end.
Yeah. San Francisco's laying 3 on the road. I'm going to lay the points to San Fran. I'm not quite a believer in Philadelphia against a offensive line of NFL players.
Yeah, I took Philly on the PFF NFL podcast, so I'll stick with that. I think they're the high floor offense of Jalen Hurts keeps it close.
You got the receivers now, so that's what you always are complaining about.
Devontae looks
The
good.
Rams at the Colts. Aaron Donald, Quentin Nelson, a little slugfest in there.
That's the best. That could be the best one-on-one matchup you'll see ever.
What's the point?
It was 4. It's now 3.5. I'm going to take the Colts with the points. I'm going to go with where the sharp money has gone. The Colts are not a great team, but I think tactically they go for more 4th downs than the Rams, and I think they'll stick to the running game against the Rams defense the way that I would want a team to.
I took the Rams. I think the Rams might make Wentz look really bad. Wentz didn't look like 2020 bad Wentz, but might happen this week against the Rams.
The Raiders at the Pittsburgh Steelers. This is old school 70s thriller right here. Chuck Noll and John Madden going at it. What are the points?
And they're each going to throw the ball 50 times each.
Yeah, I'm going to take the Raiders are getting 6. I'm going to take the Raiders here.
I took the Raiders when it was 5.5. So I'll take the Raiders and buying into their defense a little bit, and they're going to move the ball. Derek Carr.
Yeah, then you got to decide, are you buying into the Steelers offense? That's
Right.
But they are getting back to some of the play action. They're getting back to some of the, you guys call
their
it,
line's going to get tested though the Raiders defense up front the way
and they come off the ball. But remember again,
on the road now.
On the road,
Yeah.
it's going to be different. It's just that there was a reason why home field advantage was always 3 points,
Right.
forever and a day, and we got away from that last year, but it's back now. Bengals and the Bears.
This is the biggest bet I've made all week. So the Bears are now laying 2.5 at home. It was 3 and 3.5 in some places. I think the Bengals will win this game outright.
I picked the Bengals to win. My fear all the time, if you're betting against the Bears, is that one of these games Justin Fields comes in and scores 2 touchdowns.
It was like Jets-Browns on Thursday Night Football 3 years ago, where if you bet Jets, you had it in the bag, and then they put Baker in, and Baker dazzles. And
one of these weeks, Fields comes in and saves the day for the Bears.
Could Fields, I wonder if they're just going to, so it was just, they put him in like red zone and they put him in a couple of plays here and there. Could it be one of those growing things every week? So could this be, he takes every 3rd series? You know what I mean? I could see that. I could see that. I could see that being the right
Whatever's
strategy
best
too.
for Justin. That's my vote.
Whatever's best for Justin. Houston at Cleveland. Cleveland's got to be out of their mind.
12.5. It was 11.5 at open. I will lay the points with the Browns until it gets to 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, I took the Browns to cover. I mean, I'm still not a believer in the Texans, but they were impressive.
The Texans did a lot of smart things on offense. Pistol stuff, they manipulated box count. They did. I mean, maybe it's just the Jags being dumb and like whatever, but they were not as unimpressive as everybody thought they were going to be.
Will Lovie Smith keep them fundamentally sound enough defensively? I mean, there's all these like average things that Houston might do to make them better than we thought. But I'll take the Browns.
Saints and Carolina Panthers. You can barely believe what happened with the Saints, right? I mean, that was Jameis was
dominant.
Jameis 20 passes, he had 5 touchdowns.
Yeah, I mean they were so efficient.
But
on
that
the
was
ground.
setting them up running the ball, right? Like they were so efficient running,
and they were getting off the field on third downs against the Packers. The Packers ran 12 plays until the 2-minute warning in the first half. 12 offensive plays. Yeah. So
I'll say this: the Saints,
Michael Thomas.
The hard part about the Saints on defense is that they always had great depth. I think they lost a little bit of depth, but their first string is always going to be good. But they lose Lattimore to the injury. They lose Onyemata and Davenport. I don't know. I'll take the Saints this week, but I'm bearish on them long term because I think over time that defense is going to lose players. They got Roby though.
I'm with you on the Saints this week. Their defense is done. They've had those dominant type performances the last couple of years. I don't think they can sustain it, but I'll take the Saints this week.
Sean Payton showing what he can do.
Yeah, I mean that was his Hall of Fame resume right there. That was last week.
That was
Drew Brees, system quarterback confirmed, I guess.
Minnesota at Arizona.
This number, so Arizona opened 4.5-point favorites. People have liked Minnesota. Now it's down to 3.5. Minnesota's 0-8 the last 8 games against the spread, dating back to last year. I think I'll still take Minnesota plus 3.5, but I'm not that happy about it. I mean, they're not that good of a team.
All right, I'm buying into Arizona. I'll take Arizona to cover the 3.5. This is another test for those corners that I don't believe in, though, with Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen. If they cover those dudes after Julio and A.J. Brown, I mean, I'll start really believing in Arizona.
Atlanta at Tampa Bay. I can't even imagine what the spread is.
12.5. People, it started 13.5, so some savages are betting Atlanta somehow. But like, I think Atlanta will play hard. It'll be frustrating. Like if they play hard in this game and lose by 7, they'll be 0-2 when playing the average of those 2 games would have made them 1-1. So I'll take Atlanta against the spread, but I'm not happy about it.
Is it just the division? As sometimes the division team,
that's it 100%. It's division rivals.
I didn't think the Bucks looked great the other night either. I thought they were good. They weren't close to what they were.
Atlanta needs a number 2 wide receiver. They have Pitts as tight end. They have Calvin Ridley, but that number 2 wide receiver was
could use a guy like a Julio.
Yeah, they could use Julio.
I get the Bucks winning it. I do think that offense is just too much. Defensively, though, they do need to do a better job because teams are going to come out and throw the ball 40, 50 times against them.
Brady was so angry after that game. You know he's already back in there pounding away on them for cleaning it up. Tennessee at Seattle. This one that looks like a big number too.
Yeah, Seattle's laying 6. Seattle playing a normal game was one of the biggest upsets of week 1. I'll lay it with Seattle here. I actually think that they're going to outclass Tennessee.
Yeah, you're not buying it. You're so frustrated by Tennessee's play calling, I assume.
Yeah, I mean, and I also think Seattle is the best version of themselves right now. Right, what Carroll wants to do and what Shane Waldron will do is about as good of a compromise as it gets for them.
I'm taking Seattle too. They've got more options offensively. It's still the deep passing game, but now you get Gerald Everett underneath, and you started to see that Seahawks have more answers, especially when they run into the Rams later this year.
Cowboys and the Chargers. This one's really interesting to me. I mean, we saw the Cowboys look so good. They're going to have 10 days of rest. They're going to, the Chargers had to fly across the country. Disadvantages built into that one. Are we convinced on the Cowboys, especially with the key injuries?
This is one where you're buying them at their lowest. I will take Dallas getting 3.5 at LA. I also think the LA Chargers won't have the home field advantage that most home teams will.
True.
So that you're not going to get laying the full 2.5, 3 points with that. So give me Dallas. I don't like it though because of Herbert. Herbert can just end games with his arm.
I wouldn't touch this game either. I picked the Chargers on our podcast. I think this will be the test, right? Are the Cowboys going to pass against a defense that will let them? But I think the Chargers take this.
How about Sunday Night Football, Chiefs at Ravens? And we've got the great quarterback matchup here with Lamar and Patrick.
So this one opened, it was 2.5 before the Monday night game. It got up to 4.5. It's now 3.5. Kansas City favored. Last year, this very game, week 3 last year, Baltimore was favored at 3.5. So you can see how far it's gone. I think right now the only play is the Ravens getting the 3.5 though. Like I think now mathematically that's the play.
Really?
Yeah. I'm willing to bet against my team.
I'm not. I just can't buy into it. Mahomes' career passing grade against the Ravens is 88. And 90 against the blitz. He owns the Ravens. I don't know if that, matchups don't always matter, but there's a matchup here that fits the Chiefs. Lamar struggled against the Chiefs. Give me the Chiefs.
Yeah, it's a dinged up secondary makes it a little bit harder for Wink Martindale and those guys to get
I
after
think they
it with
need to
that
change
cover
their
zero.
scheme. I think they need to change.
It's going to be, and the other part about them is they really did not win many one-on-one battles rushing the passer either. So it's that's going to be a problem. Detroit at Green Bay, and
Green Bay is laying 11.5. Give me Green Bay.
there's some big spreads already. It's like people are convinced that what's going on.
They're interesting ones because people aren't overreacting to the Houston win. They're still getting, big underdogs. They're not overreacting to Green Bay scoring 3 points. And they're,
The three favorites by more than double digits this week were all 0-3 against the spread last week.
Yeah.
So it's even that. Like, it's crazy that they're people are buying the bounce back for the Browns.
Right.
Actually, sorry, the Browns covered. They didn't win, so they're 1-2. But
a lot of times you're a road game in week 1, or the Browns played the Chiefs, so it was actually more impressive. Give me the Packers, by the way, because Rodgers always bounces back.
There we go. We slugged our way through every single one of them. Thank you very much, guys. For I know you've been in the studio all day, Eric. You got all these things going on as well. And we will just try to keep you up to speed. Don't forget PFF Elite, and we've still got the special going on, don't we? The 30% or no?
I think it's gone by now, but if you type it in, it still could work.
It still might work.
It still might work.
give it a shot.
There we go. All right, guys. Thanks. We'll see you next week.